have been eliminated on this side of the Atlantic, and foreign countries are now doing the manufacturing for American companies.
Well, that goes,
Outsourcing, they call
that's
it.
an outsourcing. Outsourcing is primarily to the benefit of the company. Where can you get the cheapest production most rapidly and return it to here for the least amount of money? That's what outsourcing is all about.
Right.
And that goes to axiology, which is a value system. So is it more important to get the product someplace else and bring it here, or do you employ the people who are here at a higher cost and keep people working here?
Okay. Let's move to another area, and that is the beginning of this year. There was an occasion that took place in your sphere, in Washington, D.C., that attracted not a small turnout.
Yes.
And a man took the oath of office that really had a great impact on the hearts and minds of a lot of people, regardless of pigmentation. And I was just wondering, has any of this reverberated in the sphere that you both work? Has it had an impact on the thinking of people?
Well, I don't have a definitive study. I can just tell you, just in terms of my experience in traveling around the country and even outside of the country, that there seems to be, and it's very interesting. It's palpable almost, the level of I think a feeling of pride that you'll find among African American people. And I've also noticed a considerable change in white people, in the sense that there seems to be attempts for those, and I would venture to say those were folks who were always kind of there and now are feeling permission to be more open, to pay more attention, to acknowledge, to be just basically more open to hearing from African American people. And I've noticed that in professional spheres, I've noticed it in terms of general, comments. It's almost the invisible has become visible now. And I don't know if that's a function of feeling like, wow, finally I feel more comfortable about it, or it's politically correct to do so. But clearly that's something that's happened. As it relates to the people that I work with, particularly young folks, there is this kind of sense of hope
really?
that I've gotten. Oh yes, for certain. I've gotten that, and I've felt that. Now I'm in the South, but there is, even when I'm in different parts of the country, there is a sense of hope and pride that I find in young people. Many of them, they're
going back to school, and they're
feeling
doing well.
hopeful. They're hopeful, whether they're going back to school or whether they're applying for that position, or they're looking at moving up wherever they are. There's this sense of a little more confidence, a little more energy to their search or their behavior, their interactions.
What impact does it have on these youngsters when they're confronted with what Dr. Nichols was discussing, that a lot of the jobs have dried up here in this country and are being done overseas? So the hopes and aspirations of these young people may be shot up.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with what tools you have, what skills you have available to you in the first place. You have some young people who, I think everyone has seen what the economics have done to this country. I mean, everyone feels it, and whether or not they can articulate it, they know that these are really tough times. I believe that what happens to a lot of these young folks who don't really see a future for themselves and haven't, and you've seen them, I've experienced them, they become fodder for the prisons, they become fodder for criminal activity. Those individuals become more stressed, less capable, and perhaps even more angry and resentful than they were before, believing themselves, but still lacking the fundamental skills to just get along. So I think you're going to see an upsurge on the one hand of those who have less skills that are going to be acting out. And you're going to see some more positive reactions from those who have more efficacy.
All right, I'm going to give you some friction on that, because there's some who I've talked to, and they talk about a greed factor. And those who have the money aren't necessarily the hardest workers, but the slickest, the slipperiest. All right? What does that do to the psyche of those who have the aspirations of which you speak? And this can be answered by either of you.
Well, very good, Joy.
So you were talking about me responding before my mentor here. Okay. I think that generally speaking, I think most, just on flat across, when Americans were able to see the greed, and they were able to see these folks who have so much amassing and doing criminal stuff behind that, you know,
Right.
just criminal behavior, and somehow getting the get out of jail free card. That the difference, I think, like from in the past, is we weren't that. You can go online and find out everything now. You know, you can Google it and you can find it. There was this kind of, I guess, ignorance is bliss sort of thing, where we don't really know, and you know, yes, but now we really do know, and I think there is a great deal of resentment, a great deal of anger, a great deal of frustration, and you have this, what some would say, it actually creates the very thing we're trying to destroy. People say, well, why should I go straight? Why should I do it right?
Exactly.
You know, why should I? You know, there is an anti-desire to conform. Folks go, well, it's conforming is not going to get me what I want. Look at what, you know, these individuals have done, and they're straight up criminals. So I think on some level you're going to have that.
Okay, time for another break. We'll be back, promise. This must have an impact, though, to those who were not missing any meals, even though they weren't making a lot of money. But when they see this kind of greed practiced by people who are not of need, doesn't that sort of take the wind out of their sails
Well,
and their aspirations?
the United States of America has had, I'm not sure anymore, the largest middle class of citizens in the world. And that group of individuals, as a balance for society, keeps a society intact and in place and moves it forward. Over the years, we have lost a major portion of that group of individuals. So when you talk about greed, I would like to share with you some ratios that are 1 to another percentage. In other words, the top executive in Japan is 1, what the worker will earn, to 11, top executive. Canada is 1 to 20. Great Britain is 1 to 22. The United States, top executives, is 1, salary of the worker, to 400. Does that give you a clue in terms of how people feel? Now, if the Japanese executive is only 1 to 11 and their companies are working at top, they're making money, and 1 to 400 loses a whole corporation, where's the trust in the system? Where's the anger? These are the questions that are unstated but are very real in a society.
Well, there's a man who once wrote a play, and he said he wrote what's past his prologue. I think his name was Shakespeare or something. And what has happened to you, or what has happened anywhere yesterday, impacts on the behavior today. How do you wrestle with that, Doctor?
Well, what you have is you have a lot of people that heretofore might have been complacent, okay? Or they wanted to maintain the status quo. In the black community, just before the election for Obama, we feared the Bradley effect. That Bradley in California, everyone said, oh yes, he'll be the governor, he'll be the governor. But when people went into the voting booth, they didn't vote for him. And that became known as the Bradley effect, particularly in our community. Many of us as African Americans assumed that this might be happening to Obama. Semicolon, however, comma, about 10 days before the election, all of these people that might have voted differently in this very comfortable middle class awakened to find that their 401k had just emptied completely. So people that were ready for retirement had everything in order, their second home, their winter home, a lovely amount of money each month coming in, now have to concern themselves with going back to work or staying at work. And so the disappointment